We are activating your unique self-discovery one show at a time. The Orchard of Wisdom Self-Discovery podcast are at your fingertips, just waiting to inspire and invite you in discovering just how awesome you really are and how to navigate through life in joy, enrichment, personal abundance, in mind, body, spirit, heart, and soul. All the people we bring you are here to serve you on your journey of life. Do enjoy our next show. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Choose Positive Living right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest is Cynthia Tina today. Community housing, what is that all about? And she's a community matchmaker. What is that about? Well, she says finding a home with an intentional community is far more connection, support, and purpose. You know, we look at the cost of living today and how many people can actually buy a plot of land with a house on it on their own. And when you really are looking at the future, we're looking at a few homes being on a lot, tiny homes or a few lots coming together and creating a community. It's actually the way we were really designed to live, not necessarily to be isolated from the people around us, but to cohabitate with people around us from our own individual homes and be a part of the community, because when we're part of the community, we're actually more understanding of what's going on, how we can be a solution, how we can work together, support each other, celebrate each other. And I think it's just very, very good for our heart, mind, soul, and body, and definitely for the ecology of this planet. So we're going to be talking today about how she is a community matchmaker and how you can find a home with an intentional community with more connection and support and purpose. And there are a wide variety of intentional communities out there. Eco-villages, agri-hoods, co-housing, land trusts, tiny house villages, and so much more. And they come in the range of sizes, styles, levels of sharing, and so much as possible to find a community that fits your values and lifestyle without having to build one from scratch. And we're going to be very, very inspired today to find out how we do this, because this is the way of the future. Um, we've been shaken up. You know, saying I was given a few years ago from the universe is we're going to shake you up to wake you up for you to step up and change it up and grow up vibrationally, but also grow up as a human race. And this is still the shake-up that we're going through right now. We've had the pandemic and we've had the need of connection, and we know that we have to change our ways. But now we're really looking at the economics of the world and how to afford housing. And we realize we really do want to be together as a community, don't we? We don't like being isolated. Welcome to the show, love.
Oh, so glad to be here. Thank you for just outlining all the main reasons why intentional community living is so valuable. Yeah.
It is valuable because really, if you look back in the ages, you know, people were there for each other. That village was only as strong as everybody's participation. Somebody needed help, they were there. Somebody had a celebration, and we were all there. You know, and it's something that's been lost. And we became very much me, myself, and I, leave me alone. I don't want to know my neighbors. And we're suffering because of that, aren't we?
I think so. I think, like you said, community living is the way of the future, but it's also the way of the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's how people, humans, were designed to live. We're a social species.
Yes.
There's a whole host of health benefits that come when we have that strong connection with our neighbors, not just through our cell phones and social
Yes.
media, but actual in-person, face-to-face connection and support.
There's a wonderful video that was put out some time ago, I think on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, but it was a woman coming home to her apartment in a long corridor, nodding at people as people going by looking at their phones. And then she decided to put a table outside and chairs and knock on people's door and say, come on out, let's eat together. And then more people bought chairs and more people bought tables and more people came together, because really our entire psyches, heart, and souls and everything are in need of that connection. We are in need of that conversation. We learn from each other. So we've really kind of got to get back to the table, so to speak.
Yeah, I think so. And one thing I will point out is that intentional communities are not only for extroverts,
Yes.
like you don't have to be like a hyper social person who always needs connection. Actually, what we find is that many of the people who are most drawn to a community lifestyle are more of introverts. They're
Hmm.
people who, maybe don't have as much of that social connection in their life presently and want to have ways that it's just built into their reality. So they can open the door, they can have their neighbors outside, and then they can close the door when they want to.
Yes. Yeah, it's not about the big, huge hippie commune and kumbaya and like I understand, in the 60s where they were going with this. I
Yeah.
understand the principle behind it. But as with everything, you've got the outside interfering and contaminating and then misconstruing. And then, of course, suddenly we end up with cults everywhere. So,
Mm.
it's just something that had a good principle to it, but the practice of it didn't kind of quite fit. But we're in a different era now, and I think we have a different understanding. And there was something I was talking about with someone a few years ago, where we were talking about autistic people who were kind of somewhat independent, of creating a community where they all live in their own space, tiny houses, little houses, whatever the case was, but there was a hub in the center of support where they could all come together. And I think today we're not looking at people um, absolutely abled. We're looking at differently abled people,
Mhm.
whether it is, an introvert, whether it is somebody that's had post-traumatic stress, whether it's somebody that is differently abled in some form or other, is that we are a whole and we need to
Mhm.
live together as a whole.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah, and one thing I would add is that when people hear the term intentional community,
Mhm.
they may have all these images come into their mind, like you had mentioned, like the cults and the communes and the whole hippie era, and some people
And
even wonder,
abstaining from reality, yes.
yeah, yeah. And I do think that there is a new generation,
Hmm.
or at least some of those stereotypes
Yeah,
around community are melting away.
yeah,
And people are recognizing that, yeah, this can bring a lot of value into my life. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to mean I give up all of my privacy or all of my
right.
property. I can still have that individualism and that freedom while also having that connection and belonging.
I'm often referring to us as an orchestra where each and every one of us is a gifted instrument. And part of our life's journey is to learn how to play that instrument. And we can be the soloists and really resonate out with people. But when we choose to come together as an orchestra and agree to play together harmoniously, we
Mm.
transcend as a collective. And that
Yeah.
symphony is really something that begets. And I think that's kind of what the community living is doing, isn't it? It's we're all individual doing our own thing, but you're creating an orchestra where everybody can come and participate in.
Yeah, yeah, that's the goal. Of course, it's not always like the perfect harmony. There can
Hmm.
be challenges and conflict, and
Hmm.
you're bringing a group of people together to make decisions and do meetings and governance and facilitation,
Yes.
and a lot of us don't come into community with those skills. Those are
Yeah.
things that we're learning or relearning how to communicate, how to do group work. So, it can be challenging, but I often think that it's worth it.
Oh,
Ultimately, at
yeah.
least that's what I've found in my life is that working through those challenges. And I think that skill set as well of learning how to come to the table is so needed right now. We're
Very much
so
so.
polarized and
Mhm.
divided. And if we can learn those skills of finding common ground, that's going to be really essential for us to solve all of the many problems we have facing our society.
I think we as a society kind of went down the road of self-isolation.
Mm.
We also, through social media, people are now got their noses down into the phones, the social media, and we've kind of bought into this exterior expectation of what we should be, which is so far removed from reality of who we are.
Mm.
And I think that when you look at people who choose that community living, it's like I'm enough in who I am, and I want to be a part of a community that sees me, not an illusion of me.
Yeah. I think all of this has just been so exasperated
Mm,
since COVID and the
mm,
pandemic. We already had an epidemic of loneliness before, and then
yes.
this has made it so much worse, and we're all that much more isolated or dependent on, this online version of ourselves and less in touch with place and the land and the people around us. So, intentional community living isn't for everyone, of
Hmm.
course, but for those who are curious about it, I really want them to know that there are options. There are hundreds of communities out there of many different kinds and
Mm.
sizes and lifestyles. So you can find one that's a fit for your comfort level with sharing your values, and truly a place where maybe you could raise a family or grow old and just have more of that support built into your life.
And I think it's great when we can have the young and the old together. You know,
Yeah.
the young have got this energy and this enthusiasm that we had once, but we're on the other end of the scale now. We're a little tired. And,
Yeah.
we also have realized that there's an awful lot of benefit in taking things slow and absorbing life one step at a time
Mhm.
instead of rushing through life. And I think having in a community that balance of both there, where,
Mm.
they can talk with one another or support one another, then I think that it actually is so beneficial to us as a human race.
Mm.
Instead of, well, they're old, they're out to pasture, their time has been, or they're young and they're a pain in the butt. It's like learning to communicate with each other and see the benefits of the wisdom that we have through their life experience and through the enthusiasm and the creation that the young see. And I think it's, if we could just bridge that gap, it would be so beneficial.
Oh, yes. While you're saying that, I'm watching outside and there's some little ones in our community playing in the snow. I live in a small eco village in Vermont and we just got a ton of snow. So they're out playing. And I love the fact that this is a truly multi-generational
Mm,
community. And we have our elders in the community. We have little kids, a lot of families. And so there can be that intergenerational connection. I especially see it with the kids because many of them are homeschooled in our community.
mhm,
And so they spend their days outside playing with each other, running around. And you see how, like, the older kids help and support the younger
mm,
kids. And it's not like how I grew up and many people grow up in school where you are pretty, segregated by
yes,
age and your
yes.
friends are everyone who's your age. And we kind of carry that with us through our various phases of life. So definitely community living is an opportunity to step into that intergenerational village kind of setting.
Bridging the gaps,
Yeah,
right.
bridging the gaps.
Saying before the show that my daughter and her husband, and my daughter's about to have a second baby. And so we know we have two kids, 2 years old, new one. And just kind of down the dip is where um, my son-in-law's parents live, and they're getting older. And they're wanting to build me a place on their property.
Mm.
And the idea is that while the kids are young and one of them is special needs, is we're there for them right now. Appointments, school, sick days, just being there. And, as a grandparent, it's very, very different to being a parent. And it's a different kind of relationship. And I want to be there as much as I possibly can. And then as we get older, they're there for us. And
Mm.
with the special needs child, it's also then a full family support kind of on one compound, so to speak. And, I know another friend where they're looking at a duplex where husband live one side and the kids live on the other side because, again, the other support. We're seeing so much more of this now, aren't we?
I think it's beautiful when it does happen and it can happen.
Mm.
I think of so many people, especially in the United States, who are just really struggling with finding childcare and
Yes.
affordable childcare and that support. So yeah, I'm so happy for you and your family that you can do that. I think it's
Yes.
excellent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the benefits is that the kids, I'm 68, so the kids are going to keep me younger, right?
Yes.
And the benefit of grandma's wisdom as they grow up, but then the support, my daughter, when she had the first one, said to me, Mom, how did you do it with three of them? And I
Mm,
said, I really couldn't tell you. You just did it. You were in the moment, you did what you needed to do. And
mm,
other than having other friends where we would swip and swap and things like that, there wasn't kind of that big community. You went to the community center for this event or you
mm,
went for that program, but I didn't have that extended family. And
mm.
so, a lot of it you were wearing all the time. So, can I remember everything that went on every day? No, because which ball is in the air right now? I would love to have had that kind of community because I grew up with that. I was wandering the neighborhood with my doll's pram and everybody knew me. And we weren't so fearful of our children being out there playing as we are
Mm.
today.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I don't have kids yet myself, but I would like to. And
Hmm.
so that is a big reason why I chose to live in community and more so live in this community in particular because of that. There's already other families here. There are those systems and
Yeah.
processes and other mothers I can go to for advice and guidance and yeah, I think it's just going to be that much easier. Not to say it'll be easy, but having a family will be easier with
Yes.
support around. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is the kind of the way it is meant to be. Now,
Mm,
you talk about you're a community matchmaker, so it's not one size fits all. Somebody may be looking, I prefer more of an older generation and things that we can do together rather than, the kids running around, or somebody is saying, no, I prefer a younger generation, or I'm very much into this, or I'm very much into that, and I want to be around people that are like, that have the same likes.
mhm.
Um, what kind of requests do you actually get?
Oh my gosh, it's across the board. So many different people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different ideologies, political beliefs, um, and also people who are looking at different locations.
Mhm.
That's often a big determining factor. Where in the world are you interested in being? Where can you be with your family or work? Um, so yeah, it could be, I've had a session with a Buddhist monk who wants to find a spiritual community that's doing homesteading and is self-sufficient. I've had conversations with many people who are in the later stages of life and are looking to age either within a senior community or a multi-generational community like we've been speaking about. Yeah, people who are looking for urban communities
Mhm.
as well as rural. It doesn't always have to be, out in the country
Right.
somewhere. There's a lot of opportunities within cities where, ironically, we have a lot of loneliness, even though it is
Yes.
a more dense population.
I know the more the people come together, the less they connect, right?
Yeah, it's strange. Service-based communities that have a strong mission, wanting to give back. Maybe it's a community based around children with special needs or based around finding a more regenerative agriculture, permaculture, a whole mix of
Mm.
places. Yeah.
And that's the thing is that, we are different people. There's four very key personality traits out there, and that's how you perceive and interact in life, from that particular personality. And you want to be around people that are much like you. We always like to have the challenge of a different perspective, but you want to have a connection with some people that they're on the same wavelength, right? Because then, it just makes life more fun and more interactive. I'm interested in the urban and how you do that when you've got one, I'm on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, but over in Vancouver, they're taking away all the beautiful housing blocks that have been there for God knows how long, and now putting up these huge monstrosities, just packing people in rather like sardines. And it's like the more people that are seem to be together in that dense thing, the less they seem to communicate. So how do you find that urban community?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, like any intentional community, it often begins by one person or a small group having a vision for something different.
Hmm.
And they get together regularly, have lots of potlucks, a lot of
Mm.
gatherings. They shape kind of that vision for the community, the values, the agreements. And then if they don't have land or property already, going out and finding it. And so in an urban context, that would look like finding, a building that could be turned into a community, or maybe doing a new development if there is space and finding the members to fill it. And there's a variety of different legal models,
Mm.
ways that that could look, whether it's a cooperative organization or a homeowners association. Actually, it's interesting that you're in on Vancouver Island in
Mm.
British Columbia, because on Vancouver Island is OUR Ecovillage.
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever heard of them.
No, I'm writing that
I
down. Oh, you
Yeah,
are?
yeah, OUR stands for Our United Resources, something like that. I've been to this community twice.
Hmm.
They are very special for many reasons, including that they have helped to change some of the zoning regulations in Canada and
Good.
create an eco-village zoning designation. So it's some of the pioneering work that they have been doing. And I think they may have even started in maybe a more urban part of Vancouver before they migrated to a larger, more rural piece of property.
Yeah, I was telling my son-in-law about the show coming up because I said it was really exciting. He was excited to know all about it as well. But he actually works in the government of like, the zoning, the land. And he said like the one of the biggest problems is, even in the building of their passive house was old laws. Now, passive housing's been around for over 40 years. Yet, and has proven to be, really good housing because it generates its own air and keeps the heat in and, cold out and etc. And, much more economical to run. And, but he still had obstacles where, no, you have to do this and you have to do that. And it's because it was grandfathered in. And so we're still working with, those areas where I feel there's more of an urgency right now for them to actually say, look, the world has changed in the last 3 years. And there is so many more people coming together because whether it is an emotional thing where they felt so isolated through COVID and now they want to be part of a community, or whether it's economical, where
Yeah.
people can't afford to live on their own or can't afford the land on their own, and that people want more of a community type living. Those need to change. So actually, I'm excited to look this one up and see what's being done because I think that any form of municipalities and government need to get out of the way.
Yeah.
And, I know that there is the fear that you'll get the bad elements in there, but we get bad elements in any community. And I think that actually, if you're in a community where there is that scrutiny of who's coming, and they've
Mhm.
got to understand that they're a part of this community, obviously that there are some kind of rules. If you're here as a disruptor, you will be evicted. So, you know,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, hopefully there's that good screening through a
mm,
community's membership process. You remind me, I was in Colorado recently visiting family in Denver, and I was able to visit Queen City Cooperative, which is an urban community that has worked tirelessly to change some of the zoning and housing policies in the city of Denver, which I learned when I was visiting. Many of them are quite restrictive of multi-generational housing, like multiple families or many members of an extended family living under one roof. And a lot of this has a legacy from, pretty racist and discriminatory
yes,
policies that we're trying to redline, like
yeah,
keep the poor out, keep
yes,
minority groups out who tend to live in more community type
mm,
of housing
mm,
situations. And so this community has been doing work to change those policies, and they've had some success, but they emphasized it was definitely an uphill battle.
right.
So I do think, like you say, we need municipalities to change, governments to change, and intentional communities, when we can come together to do some of that work, can really pave the way for new possibilities.
We've got to understand that government doesn't change a thing until we demand it.
Mm,
And we've got to be persistent in our demand, consistent in our demand, and come together as that chorus.
mhm.
Because what I have learned for the many years of podcasting, the people that make the difference are the people who create the organization or the corporation that has gone and done it. And
Yeah.
then the government sees, oh, this is working. Maybe there's a point in this. But asking the government to change something without seeing it actually in working practice, it's a fearful thing for them. They won't do
Mhm.
it. But when you show, hey, look at how it's working. And you've got so many ethnic groups where they do generationally live under one roof. As the old elders get older and the young ones are there having children, they're all under one roof. They just expand that roof and everybody's there looking after each other. And that's respectful. We
Mm.
should see more of that instead of farming the elders out to a nursing home.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's this beautiful connection that elders can have
Mm,
with children, especially.
yeah,
I've spent some time traveling in Africa, and they emphasize that there, where, it's the middle-aged folks who are off working, the parents who have to do things outside and
yeah,
are away, and in some
yeah.
cases, it's really the grandparents who
Yeah.
raise the children. So yes, I think it's beautiful when that can be rekindled. Mm.
Yeah, I lived in South Africa for 11 years and that was, it was still apartheid time. And any maids that I had, I got into trouble a lot for them having their kid there or their husband there. And,
Mm.
I was saying, as long as you're coming and going with no one seeing to report you, I don't care. But then, there'd always be the snitches, and then the children would be sent away and the husband would be sent away. And I never understood, why are you fighting? If I don't care, they're there as a family unit, why should you care? Right? Instead, they have to wait to become grandparents to actually raise children and enjoy each of that development because they don't get to see their own kids grow.
Wow. Oof. Oh my goodness. Whew.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
well, I mean, obviously apartheid is gone and the country is in an enormous disruption right now,
Mm.
enormous amount of corruption. They have absolutely no energy 2 hours a day or something like this because the person who is in charge of it ran off with the money. And they're still very much in refining themselves and balancing. And sometimes it can take a few generations before you see that. But
Mhm.
we are, as I said, in that shaking up and that disruptive phase of life right now where we're looking to what worked in the past. What
Mhm.
do people need? And we really, since COVID, it's not just about our physical health, we're really understanding our mental health.
Yes.
Really desperately need support as well. And that community, because most of the time is I feel alone.
Mhm.
And you talked about people in urban. Well, if they can kind of get together in one arena, but that doesn't mean that they can't have community living where they're all living in different places, but learning to come together in one hub,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
To,
completely. Yeah, I don't think it's all about, oh, everyone needs to up and move to an
uh-huh.
intentional community. There's so much that we can do to create community where we're living right now. And a lot of it is, yeah, just making those connections with each other. If it is finding a community hub, maybe that's a shared community garden.
Yes.
Maybe it's, sharing tools, having a free library. I'm I'm inspired by there's a wonderful movement coming out of Portland, Oregon, and it's called the Village Building Convergence.
Mhm.
It's a gathering that happens once a year, a big festival in the city where neighbors come out onto their city streets and they do what they call intersection repair, where
Mm,
on the intersections of the crossroads of the street, they'll paint a big mural on the street, and that helps slow down traffic. And then they'll maybe make a cob bench on one corner and a little free library on another
mm,
corner or tea nook, and just create more places
mm,
for people to gather and connect. That's part of this broader placemaking movement,
mhm.
which I see is totally connected to the intentional communities movement. Because I travel a lot in Europe, and I'm always amazed in Europe you have these villages where there's a plaza, There's
Hmm.
a gathering place.
Yeah.
And many of these communities were built, by hand over centuries. Whereas where I live in the United States, we have so much of our development that's happened post automobile. So we've
Mm-hmm.
designed our places for cars, not for
Hmm.
people. We have so few cities that have a pedestrian street or a
Yes.
pedestrian center. So a lot of this work is just creating those simple ways for people to actually gather safely outdoors
Yes. Or indoors.
or
If
indoors.
you're in the snow right now, so it's having that, we call them community centers, but they're generally based around programs and segregate again. Right?
Mm,
Seniors, there's a kids program over there. Yeah, they're all needed because everybody needs to actually be around their own. But there should be, the arena, anybody can come,
mm,
event, and I've always been a huge person on potlucks. I love potlucks and I love everybody bringing their own dish. And then it's like, oh, smorgasbord of delights there. And especially if they bring in, of the ethnic background, it can
mm,
be really great. And I've always been one, except for now, because not where I live, but when I had a home, I was the one that had the parties and everybody come over and, potluck or this or that. And we all love those gatherings. We love them. It's just the coming together and seeing the kids play and do their things. And they would go and put on a play for us. It would always be hilarious. And then everybody just letting go of their life and just coming together in laughter and conversation. We need that as a society. And we need it either in the place of living or in the place of play.
yes, there's an expression in the intentional community movement or circle or what have you, that you can judge the health of a community by how often the members share a meal together.
Yeah.
So food is such a
Yes.
powerful element of community glue. It can really help to bind and strengthen the connection among people when we can sit down and share a meal and share a potluck together and see that smorgasbord of
Yeah.
delights, like you
Having
said.
that little area where everybody brings out the tables and everybody brings out the food and whether it is a big community potluck or whether it's just like come and eat your dinner in the square today. Everybody bring, put tables and chairs out there and they can bring their own dinner and just sit down with someone. And in Europe, many of the cafes and the restaurants have these long tables where you share with other people. And they can either have the individual conversation or they can join in with conversation instead of everything being kind of, this is your pot, right? And
Mhm.
so it's yeah, and also when you're looking at those cities, great transportation everywhere,
Yeah.
every few minutes. Where
Oh my
here it's
goodness.
like, or my family's back in the UK, the trains are on strike every 5 minutes, the buses are on strike every 5 minutes. Now we've got nurses and doctors on strike, and it's just like such disruption to
Mhm.
everybody coming together because everybody's living in the high alert again, and that is not good for us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We invest so much in, making our home and our property the best and the greatest it can be, all the bells and whistle, but we invest so little into those common
Mhm.
spaces and the means of transport and the city streets and the just the village green, whatever it may be in your case. And so, yeah, I do think there's a little bit of a shift there that could happen back to more of the collective.
Exactly. And kind of less developers coming in and, swallowing up, oh, there's a blank space of land. No, that's a community space. No, 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 I can build a high rise there. No, we don't need any more high rises. We
Yeah.
need community space, and the community needs to speak out. How many
Mhm.
people do not know their neighbors?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, completely. Yeah, there's a form of intentional community. I will call it that. It's called co-living, and I do think it's a term, unfortunately, that's been co-opted by developers, where they've caught on to the fact that people need and want community, and this is marketable, and so they've created these communities in buildings where you, especially in the city, can, rent at a very affordable rate a room, and then there's access to, common areas, shared
Hmm.
dining, and they're popping up, these companies all over, especially in the bigger cities of the world. But unfortunately, it's still that old model of, you're paying rent to a landlord.
Yeah.
You don't get to
Yeah.
decide how things run.
Mm.
So it isn't that same community spirit.
Community. Mm.
Yeah, when that happens when you have ownership and you get to decide as residents how you want things to run.
Yeah, I remember when I lived in Hillbrow in Johannesburg in South Africa, and a lot of places is that you rented your room space, but breakfast, lunch, and dinner, part of your rent was covering that food. And you can go sit on your own, or you could sit with other people. And yeah, and it was, and they took care of house cleaning. It's like kind of living in a hotel and a restaurant, but it was a way of life. And so, people came together in that way, sharing around the table. You had your own space with your own room. And then, of course, people would meet, of course, outside. But as a young person at that time, it was very, very convenient for me. I really kind of liked it because, the I didn't have to cook because it was too busy. And you always, had somebody to sit at a table with, which was kind of neat. I don't know if they're there anymore, but um, I live with an 89-year-old who's about to be 90, and I came here for a short while when I came to Victoria, and I was only going to be here a short while before I kind of found my space, and then I kind of became kind of custodian and not caretaker. She still drives, she still cooks. Short-term memory is going, but she still does everything, and and she's an absolute sweetheart, but doesn't like living on her own. Right. And what we're seeing today, I am going to be moving. I am going to be moving closer to my daughter because of the new baby. And in finding someone here, and I think what we're looking at is an awful lot of people that are pensioners like me. They can't afford to live on their own anymore. Rents are just keep going up and up and up, and they're looking to cohabit with someone else and share a home. And I think that is something that we're going to see in escalation right now too.
Yeah, I agree. This is typically called shared housing or
Hmm.
home sharing.
Hmm.
And there are programs, I'm not sure about in Canada, but at least in the United States, there's some great national programs that'll help pair people who
Mm.
are compatible to cohabitate, usually two people, sometimes three. And yeah, I think it's a great way. Makes so much sense. A lot of people also live in homes that are
Hmm.
amply big for one
Yes,
person, and why not share with someone else to lower costs and
yes.
better utilize that space? Yeah.
People don't want to leave that family home they've lived in, but they need someone else there to off the cost, but also companionship.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think, yes, it's a lot being driven by the wallet, but I also think it's like I want some companionship. I want to know I've got my own space, but also we can come together and do things,
Yes.
which I
Yes.
think is important. Um, how do you, what is the process that you go through in finding, when somebody comes to you and says, I don't know what I'm looking for, but I just know I just, want something different. How do you
Mhm.
go through that process of breaking it down as to what kind of thing they're looking for?
Yeah. So I've been fortunate to have gotten to travel the world and at this point visit well over 100 different intentional communities.
Mm.
So, a lot of it is drawing on my personal experience, having visited these places, but also having friends who live in communities. And through my work with the Foundation for Intentional Community, which has a wonderful directory, an online directory of all these different communities, I've gotten to work with many, many more.
Mm.
So the process starts with folks completing an intake form about what they're looking for in community. And then we sit down, like you and I are right now, and have a conversation where I try to dig in a little bit more to what exactly their ideal vision is. And then kind of I'm going through my head of which communities do I think could be a fit for this person. And honestly, too, I am assessing the individual's readiness for
Mm,
community living because, as we talked about earlier, there's a lot of skills and a new way of life that you'd be stepping into, and a lot of us don't come with that knowledge or even that self-awareness, self-development. So I offer some resources and guidance to help that person develop, expand their community resume, so to speak, and then really guide them through, okay, these are the communities I recommend. Now it's up to you to contact them, to go visit, to visit multiple communities, and hopefully go through a membership process with a community that does feel like a good fit.
and you just like anything, whether you're buying a car or buying a house or buying an outfit, you're going to try on a few before you pick one, right? It's got to feel right. So you're there to kind of give them that directory of what would suit them. But it is
Yes.
then up to them to follow through and find out for themselves, because you can say, oh, this would really suit you, but they've got to go and taste it for themselves. And
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of,
of
do
course.
I really connect here? Do I resonate here? And if it is so foreign to a person, maybe they need to go a couple of times before they go, you know what? Yeah, this is
Mhm.
very different to the life I've lived, but I think I can really do it here. And there has to be an awful lot of open-mindedness, doesn't there?
Yes, for sure. And if somebody's really new to the whole idea of community living, it is helpful to visit more than one community. I would even suggest for people listening, if you know of an intentional community in your area and you know it's not a fit for you, but why not go visit?
Yeah.
Because you're going to learn something through that experience. You're going to get more perspective on what you like, what you don't like. And communities like to see when you have visited other communities.
Yes.
It bodes well for yourself because you have to remember this is about building a relationship. It's a
Hmm.
little different than applying for a school or a
Yeah.
job or buying a home on the normal market. You're really building a relationship, and that's a two-way street. So as much as you're vetting the community is also vetting you. Is this person going to be a good addition for our group? Are they going to contribute and bring some value here? And that relationship takes time, and you could equate it to a marriage.
Hmm.
There's many different phases. You go on your first date, you have the courtship phase, you get to know each other, and then slowly you build in that trust and commitment.
Because you've got to understand what these communities stand for. It's the big P word, participation. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to participate, right, you just want to looky-loo, I know I want to be kept to myself. No, there's nothing to say you can't have your own space and do your own thing. But then as a community, there's also that commitment to the community to step up where you're needed.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And sometimes when I ask someone, okay, why do you want to live in community?
Mm,
They'll list off all the things that they want. I want this and I need that and da da da. And wouldn't it be great to have help with this and da
mm.
da da. But I'm like, okay, why do you want to join community? What is it that you're going to bring to the table? And
Yeah.
how are you, like you say, going to show up and participate? And I do think that's what communities are looking for.
There's wonderful communities in Europe, because of course they're always ahead of the game with this, for people with like dementia, Alzheimer's, where they all live in this wonderful community, not just little pokey rooms. Um, and then they have, people that help run it and monitor it, different people at different levels of that dementia, but they still have dignity. And I think this is something, as we get older, we do end up with some things that become challenging to us mentally or physically, but we still don't want to feel, well, that's not a reason to throw me out. I still can contribute. I just can't contribute in that way. And I think that's something, we look at sexism, but ageism is huge. All right. And whether the person is too young or person is too old, society has deemed, oh, no, you're expendable now, or
Mhm.
you haven't got this degree or this or that, so you're not worthy of it. And I think coming together openly as a community where someone like myself can say, I can contribute this. These are the things I can't do. And then somebody else can do that, but can't do what I do. And I think that's really what it's all about, isn't it?
Mhm.
Again, bringing your instrument, and not everybody has to play the same instrument.
Oh, exactly, exactly. And there is so much that older people can bring to community that is of value. Doesn't have to be, I don't know, shoveling snow or fixing the broken sink. It doesn't have to be something so physically
Yeah.
demanding. It can be a lot of that life experience and
Mhm.
the patience and the mentorship. Um, there's something that I appreciate in intentional community is that they often will refer to our seniors as elders,
Yes.
whereas in normal society, mainstream, we often call this group the elderly. So even
Yes.
just shift
Or
from the
old
elderly
fox.
to our elders is so significant because they connote two totally different, perceptions of, elders. I feel is something that has so much respect and reverence and power to it compared to the elderly.
And there's nothing, like life experience. You've lived it. You know that you as a 20-year-old cannot have what the elders have because it is the life experience that we've had. But then, tap into that experience. It can help you on your own experiences of life. And being around young people, as you said, maybe elders can teach the kids puzzles or how to fix things or, storytelling and all of that in that community, you know, Grandma Elder over there's got story time on Tuesday at 4 o'clock, or somebody's got something else over there. Again, it's back to that community where everybody has respect for each other's contribution. And, for young people, as I said, when I had my kids, other than the friends I made where we would help each other, none of us really had family around that
Mhm.
were the family dynamic to help because they either lived away or kind of weren't interested. So it's having that community where um, you're there for each other in the raising of the kids. The other thing is, where your kids are.
Mhm.
Somebody can pick up the phone. Hi, Joyce, your kids are over at my house. Okay, thank you. You know, and
Yes.
and that's so important because the kids can have that freedom of exploration, which we've
Mhm.
taken away from them today because of monetization, which we have to do for their protection. But now it can be they can go this house, that house, this house, but that they're amongst people that you trust. And you're there for each other. I think it's the way it should be.
Yeah, yeah, completely, completely. Yeah. I think that in modern society, we're so hung up on the nuclear family
Yeah.
model
Mhm.
that it has to be this small family unit, and that's, the best way. But cultures throughout time have been
Yeah.
far more focused on the bigger picture, on the group, on the community, and having people of all ages, the extended aunts and uncles,
Hmm.
and everyone helping out. It truly does take a village to raise a child.
It does. It does. And that village is only as strong as everyone's participation, right? And
Oh,
not every village is the same. The principles and the foundation of what that village is built on, which everybody understands. This is your sanctuary. You're safe here. You can
mm,
be yourself here. We want you to be yourself here because we look at you as someone of value. And isn't that what everybody's really looking for?
yes. Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I love about our community here is that we're in a rural area, but we're very close to the town of Cabot here in Vermont. And so you can walk into town, but we're a little bit removed from the road and we're more tucked into the woods.
Mm,
And there's all these pathways through the woods that link to other families' homes and little homesteads, and the kids, they just know this network of trails like the back of
yeah,
their hand. Like they
yeah.
can run it in the dark. And I think it's beautiful that they do have this freedom and this safety. And I feel it's such a blessing that we have this community. And I know it's more challenging in other environments. But yeah, it's precious. And I think very supportive of them and their freedom and ability to explore on their own.
We're not going to get rid of technology. It's here. It's going to be very much a part of our future, as it's very much part of our lives now. But what we need to do is find the balance. And like, when we were growing up, we were outside and playing. And how many times do you kind of see, how many people were brought up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s? You went out in the morning, came back when the light went out for supper,
Yeah.
and it is that everybody was out there playing with one another,
Mhm.
hanging out with one another, just exploring with one another. We've taken that exploration away. And I think that it's something that's become very detrimental to society, because the more we have connected through the phone and through apparatuses, the less we have actually connected with each other's essence.
Hmm. Yeah, 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 and like you said, we need technology. It is here. I think it is important for young people to be, technologically savvy. That's the world that they're going to
Hmm.
grow up in. But I'm surprised. I think kids can pick it up really quickly when they need to.
Yeah,
And I think it's also valuable and becoming increasingly rare to have an upbringing that has less technology a
yeah.
part of it. So,
And that's if you have a community where that exploration is going on out there. It's
yes.
like, I don't need to be on the phone or on the apparatus all the time or gaming, because life is outside. That's where I want to be, right?
Hmm.
Or each other's homes. I mean, my home was the community home for the kids. It was a big home. And so the kids actually had like 1,700 square feet of their own. And so this is where everybody came over, whether it was to play games or whether it was to watch TV, whether just to hang out with each other. Um, and very often, a kid at the door that's been kicked out of home, come on in, become the sanctuary. And, for some parents, you're, moan and groan about it. But for me, it's that I knew where the kids were. And, having kids over, who's staying for supper? Who's staying over? you know, and that was something that it was very valuable to me, for that those kids to have that a
Mhm.
space that they felt they could have friends over, and that could just be kids.
Yeah. Yep. It's great.
We need to do that. More and more what we're seeing is, as I said, governments are having to change, and I'm glad to see this. I'm really going to look up this one on the island here.
Mhm.
Um, the the pressure to the municipalities and government to start seeing this as an advantageous way of living, that
Mhm.
it isn't all about hippie cult or granola bars. This is practical. It's going to reduce loneliness. It's going to reduce depression. It's going to reduce dis-ease, which leads to disease. It's going to increase, cohesiveness, collectiveness, supportiveness, and that when we have a group of people that are living cohesively together, everything about them now becomes calmer, more peaceful, more productive, more creative. And that is less strain
Mhm.
on medical or on society as a whole, that really right now is going through a global depression.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder often what it'll take to change the perception around community,
Mhm.
and because still these stereotypes and ideas are so strong about
Yes.
what it means. And I think a lot of the work that I'm doing around education and just getting more media attention
Yeah.
on these models and helping them feel, yeah, less scary. I would love it if someday that intentional community living is the normal,
Yes,
that's
we're
how it's
going
going
that
right
way. I do believe we're going that way. It may take some time, but
now.
I think we're going
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. And
Mhm.
again, it's not the one size that fits all. You're there to specialize which community is best for them as a person and for the lifestyle they want to have, right?
Yeah.
And that there are many, and even more as you grow with this, you'll see even more ways to build communities, even in the urban area. Um, you've also got people that have a great deal of land and going, well, why do I need all this land?
Mhm.
How can we make it a community or build housing around it where everybody can share this land?
Yes.
There's the changing of opinions are happening. With the
Mm.
work that I do, I had someone, a very close relative to me, because she doesn't understand what I do, call me a do-gooder communist.
Okay.
Because this is the trouble. You're either a hippie granola bar and abstaining from any responsibility, or
Mm.
you're a cult or a communist because you want this group living. And what
Mhm.
they don't understand, look to our history.
Yeah.
We have always worked better as individuals when we work to collectively as a whole.
Yeah.
And this division that we've put ourselves in the last 100 or 150 years is really what's broken us down.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And for people who are maybe, I don't know, they don't want something that's too radical. They, would just like to have more of that social connection and support in their life. One type of community that I would really suggest they look into is called co-housing. And
Hmm.
that term is misleading because
Hmm.
you may hear co-housing and think, oh, that's everyone sharing a house together, right? But actually, this is a model of development that comes from Denmark, and two architects, American architects, were over there a few decades ago studying this model that they had in Denmark of people who had their individual homes, their own kitchen, their own bathroom, but a
Hmm.
plethora of shared spaces and facilities. And they coined the term co-housing and brought it to the United States. And now there's 200 plus co-housing communities. There's also a really strong co-housing UK and co-housing Canadian associations. And I think this is a model that harkens to that
Yeah.
old-fashioned strong neighborhood kind of feel. And it doesn't have any of that, super radical commune kind of,
Yes.
well, it's radical in its own way, but it's also just, good old fashioned neighbors, helping neighbors, making decisions together, being there, looking out for each other. And I think it's a model of community that a lot of people can get behind because it's not that far removed from mainstream living.
Exactly. And,
Mm.
when we are looking at the cost of living, I mean, before the pandemic, we were looking at, well, down the road, what would suit you to go into as a home, so to speak. And, the individual having your own space, your own little kitchen, but the group, the dining room or the living room, you can go and hang out with people or have your own space and you can have a cat and you can have a car, that, but then looking at the cost of it, where, 2000 or more a month. And then, of course, COVID coming with so many people dying in those areas, there's no way ever she will go in there ever
Mm.
now.
Mm. Mhm.
And it's, um, you know, we we've only made this that this can only suit the rich, right? But we're looking at economically, where one of the reasons why people are wanting to cohabit with other people in some form or other is not only just because they want to be a part of a community, but also economically.
Yeah, yeah, of course. We have such a housing crisis right
Mm,
now. People can't afford to, rent a home or buy a home. And yeah, and that's a lot of how families find stability and find, intergenerational wealth is through
yes.
home ownership. And that's just becoming increasingly difficult for so many individuals. And so that is one of the benefits of community living
Mm,
is that you can share costs.
yes.
Um, Depending on the type of community, sometimes it can be the same price as buying a home on the market, especially for some of these more desirable communities or communities in more urban areas, although there's some caveats there. But you get so much more for your dollar when you live in community because there's so many resources that can be shared. Not everyone needs to own their own lawnmower. Even
Yeah.
just think about like everything that goes into owning a lawnmower, all of the parts and the maintenance and the fuel. And you don't need to have your own lawnmower. You can share that. So it's just one small example. And there's a multitude of other ways that when you live in a more community setting, you can have your living expenses go down quite dramatically. And then there are other styles of communities that are maybe more rural or have more of an income sharing component or are more of a land trust model. So they're designed on the principles of creating affordable housing. And I think those could be great options for individuals who are looking for community and looking to save on costs through doing so.
Well, I mean, I in the moving, and that's one of the reasons when we're looking at the building instead of me renting, because the actual renting would have taken 80% of
Mm.
my pension.
Wow.
right? That is a little too high. It leaves nothing for living because you've still got all the other expenses that you've got to pay for in life. And this is what's happening. You've got people that are on disability that are still very, very able in many other areas, but physically they cannot do the work or some other reason, and they can't afford it. So now they have the extra stress.
Mhm.
Um, of, where am I going to go? All I can afford is some crummy little room somewhere. And then, what you've done is you diminish them, where they just feel they're being tossed out rather
Mhm.
than kind of encompassed. And I think if we can encourage more of that kind of living where the judgment isn't on your ableness, or on your differently abledness, but on what you can do and how you want to be a part of something, and that it is more economical. I think that that's going to benefit society as a whole, because this is what we're seeing right now. Far too many people being thrown away because they simply cannot afford to live.
Mhm, mhm. That's so sad.
Hmm.
Actually, I created an online course on this topic specifically because repeatedly it was a big issue that was coming up with my community matchmaking clients. And like, okay, I want community living, but I only have this much I can spend. I'm on a fixed income. What are my options? And so I'm hoping that it provides some guidance for people because there are options. And
Yeah.
I want people to feel like this is a lifestyle that is doable for them and it is
Yes.
possible. Yeah.
As people do get older, or people do become differently abled, or you've got veterans, post-traumatic stress,
Yes.
finding it difficult to kind of get back into the society that they were in before,
Mhm.
right? But they want to still be a part of something, but obviously within people understanding their own triggers and their own limitations. But they just want to be a part of it. Don't treat me as if I'm no good anymore.
Yeah.
I've got still a lot to give, but I just obviously have some issues. And who doesn't? Whether you're
Mhm.
abled or not, we've all got some issues. And I think it's, again, I have the whole veteran genre, and I'm completely anti-war, but all of these people came back realizing there was something missing that the government or nobody else was offering them. So they created the programs themselves for other
Mhm.
veterans because they found that it worked. This is what you're doing. You're creating the
Yeah.
platforms for people that
Mhm.
do not want to live, or can't afford to live, or are tired of living on their own, or, want to know their neighbors, or just want to know they can step out the door. Hi, Joe. Hi, Jill. Hi, this, hi, that, and just feel a part of something as we
Yeah.
used to.
Yeah.
And this is so very important, the work that you're doing, because we're all looking to belong somewhere.
Yes. And for those different categories that you just mentioned, whether it's the veteran or somebody or a family who has special needs, there are intentional communities that are being developed or designed around those types of
Mm,
individuals. So, of course, there's communities where you can have a whole mix of different abilities and ages and backgrounds and whatnot. But then there's also some communities, like I'm thinking of a wonderful example in New Mexico of a community of veterans
mhm.
who are learning construction and building their own homes and finding purpose and camaraderie post having all of this trauma in their
Yeah.
lives, finding a way forward that's meaningful and in community. So yeah, for many of these backgrounds and experiences, there are intentional communities that could be a fit for someone.
Yes. I had a young man here that developed or designed kind of like a modular towers that could go on properties, and you can have at least two of them on a pretty standard property. But it was about whether you had one bedroom or two bedroom, whether it was family or not, but the central living, where
Mm.
people kind of came together. Whether you had dogs and somebody, I'm working all day, it's okay, I'll take the dog out for a walk, or somebody needed babysitting, or it's an elderly needed shopping, picking up, and it was about that community living, but kind of building it up in the towers. That and it's like there are so many innovators out there that see the need for this, but again, it's getting through the red tape. And again, though, I think the more and more, again, we do shows on this, the more and more we speak about this, the more and more people say, look, this is what I want. Get with the program and change the rules, right? If you want to protectors to make sure that whatever is being built is following standards, and that isn't morally taking advantage of people, etc., etc. Yes, that's fine, but please open your mind to the fact that this is something that's desperately needed in society today, and that that you need to change some of the rules in order to make it happen.
Yes, yes, completely. Yeah, and we'll see. I think that a lot of the zoning and building code regulations that happens on a municipal level in the county or in the city district where one is located. And so often it's people who you can connect with. It's not some distant government. It's really more on the local level.
Yeah.
You can meet your city commissioners and your select board. You can get involved. And a lot of the times, that's how these policies change. For example, our community was founded by a woman who was the city planner for our local city. And
Mhm.
so she kind of knew the ropes. She knew how to work with bureaucracy, and she was able to make this community happen, which I'm not sure it would have without someone like her.
Exactly.
So we need people to get involved and to very actively help to shift some of these policies. And I think it's doable because we have more and more precedent through the work of some of these intentional communities.
Yeah, I have a saying, it's no more activism. We want to see actionism, right?
Actionism, love it. Yes.
We've talked about it until the cows come home. We now need
Yeah,
action on it, right?
yeah, right.
Now, one of the things you've got here, which people can fill out, is that you have a quiz, communityfinders.com/quiz. And this is a kind of a quiz of what kind of type is a fit for them. So that's a really good thing for someone to do when they're first kind of inquiring, or maybe they don't know. And
Yeah,
it's something, kind of that intro to them, or a kind of, okay, I didn't know I kind of would like that, but that sounds good. So that quiz is a really great idea for people to start doing, just to investigate, what do I want?
yeah, definitely. It's a fun little quiz. It'll take you about 2 minutes, and then you'll get to see, okay, which of the five most common types of intentional communities could be a fit for me. And exactly, it's an easy way to get introduced to this concept.
And you're a spokesperson and educator with the Foundation of International Community, also the founder of Ecovillage Tours, former trustee of the Global Ecovillage Network, and on CommunityFinders, of course. And then, of course, actually on your site, you have one hell of a lot going on here. One-on-one matching, community accelerator, money and community, mini course, finder circle. And you've got a whole lot there that just explains everything. So you're not just saying, oh, no, this is the style that you have. This is all that there is. You're showing people that there is a way of finding something that matches not only your needs, but who you are.
Hmm.
You want to be in a community where you feel it's your tribe.
Yeah, yeah, and helping people along the journey because it
Yeah.
is a process to go from where you're living now through all the steps of visiting, researching, evaluating, and then ultimately becoming a member of a place. So I really do want to be a support for individuals who are on that path.
And you work with people that also want to live internationally in this type of program?
Yeah, I work a lot with Americans who want to live in America or in Europe, or Europeans who want to find something in their country or abroad.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's pretty international. And if I'm not able to help you in the region that you're looking for, I often make referrals to other individuals who can.
Right. I mean, I don't know, how did you fall into this?
Oh, yeah. It was a winding path. I did not grow up in an intentional community. I grew up just in the suburbs outside of Boston with parents who are incredibly loving and supportive, but they still don't fully understand what it is that I do.
I hear
Yeah, yeah, right.
you.
So I think it just came through reading books about different lifestyles, spending a lot of time myself in nature. I started a garden in my parents' backyard at a young age. And I read a book about an intentional community, a place in North Carolina. And I didn't know it by that term. I didn't
Hmm.
know like those terms like ecovillage or co-housing or what have you at that time, but I was very attracted to it. And so when I was 15, I went down there and spent the summer and really got my eyes opened. And that kickstarted me on this whole journey all around the world. I'm a graduate of Goddard College, which is a low residency school.
Mm.
So I was able to get my degree in sustainability while traveling and visiting these different eco projects and intentional communities. Yeah, and then found my way into the organizations that support the network of these places. And so then I had kind of a career built around this.
Hmm.
And then several years ago, I decided that I wanted to put down roots somewhere and pursue my dream to build my own home. So I joined the community where I live in Vermont, which is about a half an hour drive away from my parents. So I'm close to them. And I have actually got to build this house with my father as well as my neighbors because I live in a community where everyone who lives here, when you join, and this is not so typical of communities, but I found it in this one where when you join, you purchase your land and then you get to build your house on that land that you own. So it's just been incredible to
Mm.
get to, yeah, have this be a passion of mine, have it be what I live, have it be my work. It's really, I'm immersed in this way of life, and I really believe in it.
Well, you were actually very, very lucky that this was something that came to you so young and you were able to follow this path because very often this is someone's redirect.
Oh yes,
You
yeah,
know, they've lived the corporate life, the expected life, and this and that, and then it's like, I can't do this anymore. And then they found the passion and the purpose. Where you found it very, very early. And like at 15,
exactly,
solidified, well, this is the path that I'm on. So, you know,
yeah.
we want more young people to know the path they're on. But at the same time, all of your experiences are part of it. But, you know, one of the reasons I do these shows and one of the reasons why us elders like to help people on that path of finding out who they are, why they are, and what they really want out of life is so that you avoid the Grand Canyons we went down, right? You're
Mm,
going to have potholes. This is how you can get over the potholes, but we don't want you to go down the Grand Canyons. So,
yeah.
you know, being in tune with who you are and being on that self-discovery of what it means to you and where you want to take it, kudos to you, girl.
Oh, yeah. And to that point, I really stand on the shoulders of so many people who have gone before, and I've had so much mentorship in my life and support. And yeah, it hasn't always been easy, of course, but I think having role models and just other communities that I can see and know that it's possible has been tremendous. So, yeah.
Well, I say inspiration begets invitation. So it inspired you and it invited you to take this path. Even though you didn't quite know where you were going, you were
Mhm.
willing to be wondrous and in discovery to see what it meant and how far and wide it was.
Yes, yes. I have a sister, a younger sister, who is nothing like me at all. She lives in the city. She has a corporate job. She's just walking that very straight line. And so I know that that was an option for me, and I chose consciously something different.
Good. Thank you. You listen to your conscience, you listen to your heart and soul, and it put you on the right path. And I wish more people would do that, but the consciousness is rising. And when you rise up into that higher frequency of that consciousness, you're in the state of kindness, caring, compassion, and love. And then you go and do what you love to do because you love the effect that it has on other people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the effect on your own self and how
Yes.
you feel. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a circle. Right?
Dessert.
Yeah,
Yes.
everything is a circle. When you put out that love, why you do it, and it sparks the love in other people, and then that love comes back to you, and it's a constant generator. So yeah, I'm really glad of what you're doing. I want to see a lot more of it here in Canada, and you know, I live on Vancouver Island. One of the reasons I moved here 5 years ago is because the vibe here, you know, the island itself has just such a wonderful frequency. And you know, I couldn't live on the lower mainland anymore because it was just getting too dense, too busy, too static. And the island has still got that wonderful embracement where you can kind of feel yourself here. which is
Mhm.
wonderful. And that's kind of what we're looking for, isn't it? It's always that place that where it feels like home.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And thank you for the work that you're doing and having these shows and yeah, spreading this way of life and yeah, the ideas and the perspectives that embrace more of that inspiration. So
This is
thank
what
you.
it's about. And for people who are listening here today, maybe you've never even thought about this.
Mhm.
This is something where go and check it out. Go and have a look. You may be in your 40s right now and go, I know it's down the road, but there's no harm in investigating right now, or even investing in something for the future. Or looking at, the whole extended family, like my daughter and my son-in-law, of it's all being on one plot where we can, we're all individual, have our own individual lives, but we're there to support one another. And I think we need to get back to that mentality. How
Mm.
can we be there in support of each other, which is really important.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
do people reach you, my dear? Other than taking the quiz, which I think is a really good first step, what's the best process to go through and how do they find you?
Yeah. So my website is communityfinders.com. Often there's this term community seekers, and I don't like it so much because seeking you could do forever, but you
Yes.
want people who can find community.
Yeah.
So communityfinders.com, that's my business website, and that's where you can see everything that I'm offering, including my community matchmaking service. And that is the one-to-one service. If you'd like to work with me to get recommendations for communities that could be a fit for you and advice, answers to your questions, I really recommend that. So,
And then fill out the quiz, obviously, to kind of find out, where can answer a lot of your questions and then reach out to you because then you've got some knowledge there already. And of course,
mhm,
your Facebook is I am Cynthia Tina, which is CYNTHIATINA. And you've also got a group called Community Finders as well.
yeah. Yeah, the group is on Facebook, and that's also a really wonderful way to connect with other individuals who are on this journey of finding community. And I share lots of advice and articles. And my main focus right now is putting out more content and more resources to support people on the journey. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you can find a lot of good information on the website too.
Mm-hmm. And being part of the group is just that you can actually hear how other people are enjoying it, what experience they're having for it. Maybe right now you just kind of think, well, I don't know, is it for me or isn't it for me? Well, one of the things that we've lost as human beings is that sense of wonder. And if we can step into a little wonderment and just kind of explore and be open to what could it mean for you, just listen to how it's affected other people and what kind of lifestyles they're living. And there's sure to be something along the line that goes, that resonates, right? But unless you're willing to self-explore and wonder, you're never going to know. So
Exactly. Yes, yes, yes. You have to be open. Mhm.
exactly. I do believe this is the way of the future. Just economically, it makes sense. Environmentally, it makes sense. Emotionally, it makes sense.
Mhm.
Spiritually, it makes sense.
Mhm.
Everything, it ticks the boxes because um, at some point in our lives, whether we're young or whether we're raising a family or whether we're older, we really want to be a part of that community where there is that outside support of the good times and the bad times. And
Mhm.
when something's gone wrong, people are there to help you. When there's something to celebrate, they're there to celebrate with you. And I think it's a beautiful way of living. And,
Yeah.
we're not talking about communes and cults. We're talking about community and cohesiveness, right? Which is very, very different. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me on this show. It's been really wonderful to speak with you and yeah, and just get this message about community living being possible and how valuable it is more out there.
Yes, most certainly. And of course, if you go to my eco solutions genre, you'll see a lot more on the tiny houses and other types of forms of living. Just kind of please plant the seed. Plant the seed in your head, even if you're not there right now, or if you are there and you go, but I have no idea where or what or how. Take the quiz, because that will narrow it down for you. Reach out to her, whether you are in Canada or the States, because even having a conversation will at least give you some understanding of what options there are out there, right? I didn't know there was something like this on the island. Yay! Right? What else is out there? So,
Yes.
it's important that we just open our minds to explore.
Yeah, yeah. And I love hearing from people. So feel free, folks, to reach out to me. And I'm looking forward to connecting.
Excellent. That's Cynthia at CommunityFinders.com. So go to CommunityFinders.com, see everything there. Be willing to explore, be willing to go to the group and see how people are interacting and what it's all about. And just kind of, sit back and think, is it for me? Is this the right direction? And until you ask that question and then you're willing to hear the answers, you're not going to know. But be willing to explore, because community living means supportive living. Everybody there is supportive of each other, in celebration of each other, being there for each other and celebrating you as an individual. And that's something that we all want in our lives. So thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. Find all of our shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com under podcasts or selfdiscoverymedia/shows. And for all our current shows, go to What's New. We are supported by you, the audience. You'll see a nice big shiny blue button for one-time donations, or follow us on Patreon and you will be able to support us there. We enjoy bringing you such wisdom. And the next show will be up in just a moment.